We are going to be reviewing the 2005 movie First on the Moon, which is a documentary about the totally factual and totally real Soviet manned lunar landing in 1938. I loved this one. This one was fun.
I loved
thought it was pretty
I
neat.
went into it thinking it was going to be like a funny movie. There were some funny moments, but then it was just kind of like, wow, this sucks.
It takes
man.
you for a ride.
It does take you for a ride.
Yeah, to completely level with you, I thought we were going to have something along the lines of the funnier version of Sibrel.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what I meant in the DMs. Yeah, like God's irony, just he funny. But no, this was pretty good.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, the setup is that in 2005, a bunch of Russian journalists are on the trail of what they think is a secret mission, some kind of secret space mission in 1938. Something that has been like pretty clearly and pretty comprehensively covered up. So this movie follows them. It's a lot of like, it uses old footage. They do a really good job of shooting current footage and then putting it in black and white, and like the sets are all really good. So basically, also because this is a documentary, because this is presented in a documentary style, we are going to be kind of explaining it a little weird because it's jumping from place to place. If we just explain it as the movie progresses, like scene by scene, this is going to turn into a very stuff happening kind of movie, which we don't want to subject you to. We're basically going to describe this as if it was a real movie, like the real story, and then throwing in some stuff here and there for like the documentary side. So the way this is presented, the first thing we're given is this like archival footage of Chilean farmers being interviewed for a UN investigation. So in March 1938, a fireball streaked through the skies over Chile and crashed into the mountains. And we are told that, like, although the locals report this to the police, there was never any official search. I guess it would have been the League of Nations at the time. The movie definitely says UN, but oh well.
Yeah.
And no one has located the so-called Santiago meteorite. To kind of like take this sequentially through time, we're shown a bunch of kind of establishing scenes of science happening. You know, we want to establish that rocketry was a thing well before Apollo and Soyuz and Sputnik. They talk about all of these historical examples, a lot of them, falsified because it's a mockumentary, whatever. There's talking about the first man to ever invent the rocket, Chinese master Zheng Lian, who like turned fireworks into these terrifying weapons. There's a 1320 treatise on various European rockets and like undersea torpedoes and stuff. There's a battle that was stopped by the launch of a Polish entrepreneur's rocket, as both sides like saw it and cowered in fear. My favorite, though, is they talk about the execution of alchemist Johann Folck in Leipzig, Germany, who was burned at the stake along with his invention. So they just piled him and all of his rockets onto the stake and lit it up.
And it exploded.
Yeah, it's described as like he was begging people not for his life, but to like tell them to get away, and then everything exploded, killing him and most of the crowd.
Guys, you're being fucking stupid.
Yeah, that one ruled.
Oh, and even just like, again, the art, the production of this is great. Like, a lot of the archival footage is not actually old archival footage. It's like they have just shot in modern day and put like black and white, but it's all very well done. It's like period appropriate dress and whatnot.
Yeah.
And for this, some artist has just been asked to do a wood carving of like, hey, can you do a wood carving of a rocket being burned at the stake, and then another one of like a mass casualty event in 1400s Germany? Yo, can you just do Nidellen brackets 1500s Leipzig? And someone like getting paid to do that, if you're someone who is used to like medieval wood carvings, must have been so much fun.
Must have wondered what the hell is going on.
And then finally, everything comes back to Russia. So we've got these various different Russian rockets. We've got imported British Congreve rockets. There's a design for like a barge-mounted Katyusha-style like 1890s rocket. And they've got this letter of Nicholas II talking about how like individually hyped he is for rockets and how he's going to push this.
He's getting rocket pilled.
Yeah. And all of this is just setting up the fact that like rockets were a thing long before Sputnik and Apollo. This is not something that just happened in the 50s and 60s. Kind of setting the precedent for like, hey, why wouldn't there be a moon mission in 1938? And this continues into the Soviet era. So past the like we've established the rockets have been around for a really long time. The Russian Empire was well established in rockets, and now we're getting into the Soviet futurism section.
You know, I just thought about this. This is a really good follow-up right after the Biss suit.
Oh yeah, like this kind of like speculative period. I know we talked about it then. I love anything that deals with that like 1920s, 1930s, like Buck Rogers kind of like rocket futurism period.
Like that style of spacesuit does make multiple appearances in this.
Oh, I love the spacesuit in this one. I have to run it by JL to see how good it is. He'd probably hate it because it has the umbilicals on the helmet, and the helmet actively splits in two. But I like the design of it.
The helmet for the movie inside of the movie, where it just has the two sets of tubes on either side of the head
that don't actually connect. They just connect from the side of the helmet to the back of the helmet.
Yeah, it's just they're handles. That's
They're decorative.
They just let you grab someone and throw them around.
They're your mandated entanglement risks.
How else am I going to get snagged on the ship?
Well, yeah, it's because it's a perfectly smooth like Vostok sphere. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself.
The ideal, perfectly smooth uniform sphere.
We get a couple of videos of like Soviet futurism, like 1920s, 1930s, you know, like we have done the revolution. We are now going to push forward science and equality like further than anyone on the planet. And the way this is done is like one video is a bunch of like Soviet pioneers, so like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts effectively, and they are doing their own rocket science. And the way they are doing this is by capturing a duck, putting it in a pot, putting the lid on the pot, and then putting the pot on the wheel of a bicycle.
And just spinning him.
And just spinning it like a centrifuge.
Just rotate the duck as fast as physically possible.
And this is described, like the video describes this as like they are finishing the work of Tsiolkovsky, and Tsiolkovsky being like one of the big founders of rocketry. Like the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation is named after him. They are finishing the work by rotating this duck. There's another one where they're talking about like this idea of the new Soviet man, which was this kind of idea back then of like, all right, well, you know, we can remake the Soviet man, except this is taken to the point of just like cybernetics. So they're talking about how like it's this mini propaganda reel about how, oh, we can replace bones with metal, and then the new Soviet man will be able to like get run over by a car and not feel anything.
Yeah, I did not like that.
And they've got like they've got a bunch of skulls with like metal plates bolted on. And then they've got an entire articulated metal rib cage. It just like looks like something out of 40K. It looks like what Space Marines get like grown into them.
It really does look like a carapace.
And finally, we get to see the prowess of Soviet pilots. We get a reel of Soviet stunt pilots flying their planes in 1936. And among them, the best of these test pilots is Captain Ivan Kharlamov, and he's going to be our main character going forward. So who is Kharlamov? The way the documentary describes it, no one the fuck knows. There is no background info on him. All they have is one childhood photo where he looks like that Chechen dude, the really short guy.
Oh, he fucking does.
Which I guess is more like
you'd have to pull up a side by side for me because I don't.
I'm talking about the Chechen guy with dwarfism that's like, yeah, who's in all the memes, but is also buddy with fucking Kadyrov for some reason.
Yeah, Hasbulla.
Yeah, that guy. Like, regardless, we have a single picture of Kharlamov as a child, and his next recorded info is in 1930, whenever he apparently helped clear out a bunch of bandits in South Turkestan, and then he just becomes a test pilot. And then over time, more and more of these characters are introduced, both to us, the audience, and like into the story. We learn about a bunch of people who are being monitored and selected for some kind of project going on. Ivan Kharlamov is the first. We are introduced to a new character, Kanif Fatakov, and he's, at the time of filming, he is still alive. So he's going to be like our main interview subject talking about all of this. We have a couple of interview subjects as we go. At the time of filming, he works at the St. Petersburg Museum of Zoology, where he like actually, I love this. He's doing work putting together all of these animatronic giant bugs for the museum. And you get to see like the insides of them. These are actual like animatronics. He's basically doing like Five Nights at Freddy's, but with giant bugs. And he has somehow managed to like survive all of the purges by doing this.
He's just the bug guy. That's it.
And he describes how in 1935, they started being selected for something. Different people from all around the Soviet Union. All of the candidates had to be military and they had to be athletes, but they didn't know what they were being selected for, and they also didn't know where they were being sent. They described being like driven around in buses with like black windows the whole time. So Captain Ivan Kharlamov, he is a test pilot. Knief, he was a sailor and a diver, and like the thing that made him famous, we see some propaganda reels, was he swam from Leningrad to the island of Kronstadt in ice water in the middle of winter and somehow didn't die. The next candidate is Nadia Svetlaya. She is an engineer and an athlete, and like I like this. We get some really good like old reels of the Soviet like athlete Red Square kind of marches where just a bunch of really fit hot people would just march down Red Square. There'd be some like floats where a bunch of them are like in the giant wheels of a huge bike or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't forget the people that are strapped into like the pain wheel that's getting rolled down the parade.
Yeah, like imagine a giant bicycle, except every spoke is a human being.
And on top of all of this, Stalin is watching.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he is in it.
Then again, I don't know if he was actually watching that. Well, that might have been like cut together or something. But regardless, yeah, it's like this big athletics.
No, Quinn, you don't understand. Stalin is watching.
Okay, yeah, he is always watching everyone at every phase. That is fair. But Nadia Svetlaya, her thing is that she has like won 3 times in a row. She has won in the defense games, which is basically just like the Olympics, but like military themed the way it's described, where like she ran a race wearing a gas mask.
Yeah, that is a nightmare in my book.
Oh, yeah. She has won that 3 times in a row, and that is her claim to fame. So she has made it into this like selection for this big project. Final candidate we're introduced to is Mikhail Roshkin, or just Mishka, as everyone calls him. He is a circus performer with dwarfism, and he is known as the Man Bullet because his whole act was getting fired out of a cannon. And he is also just like, whenever we see him on screen, he's also just like, he's as jacked as everybody else. And they're picking him because like, hey, this is a guy who is used to getting like size and mass wise, he's efficient. And he's used to getting fired out of a cannon. This guy seems good at this.
He's just getting tossed around for part of this.
And I'm kind of jumping around my notes here to make it fit time-wise. But like, I want to say the way we learn about all of these characters is great, because they have a plot device, and that plot device is spying. So we don't actually see any of these characters, aside from Fadakov, kind of describe themselves. We get these shots where it'll be like a picture of a film reel, and a voice will say like, subject for monitoring, Ivan Kharlamov. And then we'll get a couple of shots of various NKVD agents spying on them. And it's never like outright jokes, but I did find it funny. Like the way this is described, like the monitoring is like ridiculously over the top. There's a bunch of shots that imply like NKVD guys are just like lying underneath their tables while they're eating. Every single person, every one of these characters has like 5 different cameras in their rooms at any given moment.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
It's like some Panopticon shit. We are like, one of the modern day characters that the documentarists can actually talk to is the guy who was in charge of all of this filming, who is now just a fat guy living at an old age home in Minsk, Belarus. He's just kind of describing like, yeah, I was just doing my job. Part of that was having a camera. He talks about how cool the camera was, and then we get this propaganda reel, this like upbeat little tutorial thing that I really liked.
How to use the camera.
The how to use the camera for NKVD agents. It's this like propaganda reel of like, all right, you know, here's what you do. Step 1, keep your distance.
Using the tables. Yeah, it really is just like the little the tutorial.
Yeah, it's like step 2, use Colonel Golchenko's tables, and like it flashes up this incredibly huge textbook of like shitloads of all of the camera angles. They have to like, an agent should be able to develop film in any scenario whatsoever. And it shows a bunch of guys in uniform holding these like vats of liquid for like developing the film, having to like go through an obstacle course without dropping it.